24th, 1919, in St. John's Merced on the Old Center Road. In the Fortin House. I think it's still standing by Sunset River. From there we moved to the Baldy Dance place on the Danville Road, which is Route 2 now, V now. My father and my mother and another couple with 2 kids rented the farm with the idea they might buy it. The farm was owned by a meat man. His name was Adelaide LeClaire, who sold meat from his wagon from house to house. Well, it didn't work out because the other couple wasn't doing their share. For one thing, my mother used to take care of her 2 kids all the time, how the woman ran around with other men. Then we moved from there to Deer Avenue in about the year 1922, St. Johnsbury, at the bottom of a steep hill. My father used to grow his own pipe tobacco. He used to let it cure in the attic, in the woodshed. Then I remember he made a cart for me with a box that came from the store. The corners of the box were dovetailed, so he told me not to leave it out overnight because it might rain. So one night I forgot it out and it rained and the box fell apart. But he made it over again for me. Then I remember one winter my mother wouldn't let me go sledding because one of the girls wasn't wearing panties. We had a horse, her name was Jenny. It was given to my father because the man used to abuse her, and he couldn't do anything with her. She had been taught to open gates and come out of the pasture and go to the barn. My father never hit a horse if they pulled when he asked them to. Most of the time, if she was alone, he didn't even drive her. Then, one time somebody was stealing our stove wood. So my father told the neighbors that he had put gunpowder in some of the wood. After that, he didn't lose any more wood. Then I remember one night we were playing cards. This fellow that my father worked with at Fairbanks Scales came in. He had been to Canada on vacation. He asked Dad, "Hey Joe, do you want a dog?" My dad says, "I got to see what I'm getting before I say yes." So he reached in his coat pocket, pulled out a German police puppy. 2 weeks later, when the man came to see us, the puppy was growling and was giving him a hard time coming in the house. Then I remember one time this fellow wanted to use my father's horse. So my father told him not to use his whip. If he did, Jenny would stop him, wouldn't even pull on an empty wagon. So going up the steep hill by the house, the fellow forgot and struck her with his whip. So Jenny stopped instantly. So he had to unhitch her from the wagon, put her in the barn. So when Dad got home from work, he hitched Jenny on the same wagon, took the reins, put them in the wagon, didn't even drive her. He said, "Yay, Jenny." She took right off. The old man didn't know what to say. Then one time my father went to see this man. They had a farm. This man and his little boy, about 10 or 11, was milking. So the cow the little boy was milking kicked the boy. He spilled the milk. The man hit his little boy. So my dad said to him, "Stop that. It wasn't his fault. You'll hit him again, you'll have to answer to me." That man was always treating his kids rough. When they were 15, 16, they ran away from home. One time I went with my dad. He got a job cutting pulpwood. I used to help him pile it. But the other man who was cutting just a little ways from us was sitting on a log and make his kids do the piling. Then I remember when it came lunchtime, he would take a jar of mustard out of his pocket, put some on his sandwich, but wouldn't give any to his kids. My dad said he did the same thing at home. When we lived on Deer Avenue in St. Johnsbury, the man that owned the house where we lived, his last name was Young. Well, one day he was cutting down trees on a steep hillside. So he tied a rope around the tree and one end for himself. He thought he could keep the tree from going down the hill. But the tree was too heavy for him. It rolled down the hill with Mr. Young with it. It almost killed him. And we moved from Deer Avenue to Route 2 in Danville, what is now the Chamberlain place, not far from a brick house. One day I was playing in the dirt with my trucks when I hear a noise, and I look up. It was Jenny coming to the barn real fast. We saw each other about the same time. I didn't have time to get out of her way. I thought she was going to stomp all over me. But she didn't. She just jumped over me. One time I remember Dolph's father, he had a Model T Ford. He gave a ride to this man and woman. Mr. Roy had a drink too many. He missed the driveway and tipped over. The door came open and out comes the woman riding the pig. And one time, the man who owned the house, him and his sister used to live upstairs. They both drank a lot. The house caught a fire. The man came down, but not his sister. My dad says, "Where's your sister?" The man says, "Oh, she's upstairs. Let her burn." So my dad went up and carried her down a narrow stairway. She weighed about 275 pounds. I remember her laying on the lawn while someone was trying to revive her. There was some gypsy who was camping across the road in George Damon's field. They all came over and formed a bucket brigade and put the fire out and gave my mother a basket on legs that they'd made. My brother Arnold had made a harness to fit our dog, Buster, so you could hitch it to a cart like a horse. One day I was about 6 years old. I'm trying to put the harness on him. He was giving me a hard time. All of a sudden this man came on the porch. He was going to knock on the door, but when he see Buster stood up on the screen door and growled, the man said to mother, "All I wanted was a sandwich, but you can forget it now." And I remember one morning before Dad went to work, the man knocked on the door, told Dad, "I sell pots and pans. You give me a breakfast and I'll give you pots and pans for payment." So Dad says, "Okay." Man had his breakfast, gave Dad pots and pans, and the man says he was going to take over. Dad says, "Well, we'll see about that." The man says, "You and who else?" Dad says, "That little old dog there by the stove. All I have to say is a couple of words." Buster was all planning to leap on the man. The man took his little old bag and left in a hurry. And I remember just a little ways up the road, their name was Minnie Karen. He had a son who was a bootlegger. He always had big cars. That's so he could move faster after he got his load of whiskey from Canada. He used to turn his motor off below our house and coast into his father's driveway so his father couldn't hear him. His father had a hired man, but he didn't pay him very much money. So the hired man stole a diamond ring. They reported it to the sheriff, Fred Flint. So one day, while I was playing outside, I saw this old car go by. It sputtered a few minutes and stopped running. So a man got out dressed in overalls, lifted the hood and started working on it. So this made Karen's hired man worried. So he was on the porch watching the man in the car. So he yelled at the man if he could help. So the man says, "Maybe you can." So the hired man came down very slowly, and as the hired man gets closer, he says, "I would have come sooner, but I got to watch out for that old Sheriff Flint." So the man with his head under the hood says as he straightens out, "Come with me. you're under arrest. I'm not old Sheriff Flint. Then one day, when we lived at the same place, my dad was mowing hay. Well, it was so thick in one place that my job was to pull it away from the next cut around so the cut-a-bar would not plug up. I happened to step on bumblebees. I was dancing up and down, and my dad was yelling to get out of there. Man that lived in the brick house, that was before the Karens moved there, he had only one leg. He was dancing up and down on that one leg and laughing to see me jumping up and down. Now I remember one night someone was trying to steal our heads. So good old Buster heard them. He woke Dad up by going to his bed, licking his face and going to the window and growling. Well, Dad and Buster got to the door. Dad forgot that Mother used to put a chair under the doorknob. He knocked the chair down and it made quite a lot of noise. The man heard him. Dad opened the wooden door and Buster jumped right through the screen door right after the man, who by that time got to his buggy wagon and Buster right after him. He must have given that man a hard time because he didn't come back for quite a few minutes. Then one night Buster woke the man across the road by barking. So old George Damon followed Buster to his barn and found two of his cows hanging by the neck. The old floor had given up under them. Old George never fixed his fences, always broken down, and his cows always in a row. Buster had never seen a cow before. We moved, so one day George and my dad were working on the water pipe, which was near the road. Buster was there watching them. When George's cows came out in the road, George would send his dog after them. But the dog was so old, he couldn't move very fast. So the cows always went inside the fence a little ways. Buster was very anxious to go after them. So George chose my dad so that Buster go. But my dad says, I don't know what he might do to them. George says, I'll take the blame if he hurts them. So Dad says, take them, Buster. Buster went after the cows, just like a real cow dog. The cows would come back, but when they saw Buster watching them across the road, they'd turn around and go back. Our mailman was afraid of dogs. Buster used to sit on the bank and watch him. Well, the mailman got, so he took his whip and hit Buster, but not very hard. Well, he got that for quite a while and got Buster so mad at him that he jumped in the sleigh and the mailman on the other side. So he told Dad he had to get rid of Buster. Well, Dad did, and we all cried. Even George Damon across the road, he told Dad the dog was worth more than 3 mailmen. He should have shot the mailman and saved the dog. Then we moved from the Danville Road to the Danville Town Farm. The town of Danville asked my mother and father if they wanted the job of managing the town farm. Jobs were hard to get then, so my father and mother accepted the job. They told my father he could run it like it was his own. No rent to pay, but he had to keep the house and barn in fairly good shape. There is 100 acres belongs to the farm. My dad used to grow potatoes and all kinds of vegetables. In the fall, he used to put lots of these in the cellar, where they used to keep for a long time. So we'd have lots of food for the winter. The town used to pay $3.50 a week to take care of the people they sent to us. Lots of times there was no running water. They had lead pipes from the land, to the house. If there was a leak in the pipe in the winter, it froze, and sometimes it flattened the pipe shut. Then we used to carry the water all winter because the ground was frozen about 4 feet deep where the pipe was. Some of the water came through rough logs. They were made of cedar from the spring to the ran. The ran pumped the water to the to the house. The ram didn't have to be hooked to electricity. I don't know how to explain how it worked, but the ram had a big ball on top of it where the water ran in from the spring. It had something like a valve that you'd have, like you have in your heart. It was made of leather. My dad used to change it. He used to put small weights on it to make it work better. The ram was called a hydraulic ram. My mother used to go to St. Johnsbury on Saturday nights on Railroad Street to cross the bakery after the bakery closed and buy cakes and pastries at half price. And sometimes it was given to us. First National stores used to give us bananas and different kinds of fruit. My mother used to make most all my clothes. When I was in school, she used to take men's clothes that was given to us and take it apart and make it over for me. So I was dressed as well as most kids that had money. The only thing they had to buy was my shoes. My dad used to say when he was a kid, he was an orphan. Lots of times he didn't have shoes to wear. And he would make sure we always had some. My aunt and uncles used to come up from St. Johnsbury on Sundays. They would bring food and have a picnic. And we all had a great time. Then one time a fellow, one of my sisters was going out with, I used to pick on him a lot. There was a big hook on the side of the house about 8 feet up. He got sick and tired of me picking on him, so he picked me up and hooked me on the hook. I was sure not to pick on him anymore. Now I remember one morning at breakfast time, my dad went to the window and looked out. He said, well, I'll be damned. Here comes Bill going on the crust with his car. We all thought he was just kidding us, but it was true. Bill going was driving up to the farm on the crust with his Maxwell. They didn't plow roads then, they used to roll them. He had come from New Hampshire to see if he could get a job on the Barnett Dam. He was our third or fourth cousin from my father's side of the family. My oldest sister started going out with him after a few months. He got jealous if she went out with someone else. So one day they had an argument, and he threw a cigarette at her, and it landed in her hair. Her hair caught fire, and my mother saw it. I had never seen my mother lose her temper, but this time she did. She told Bill Goin to get in his little old suitcase and get in his little old car and get out and never come back. Well, we never saw him after that. Then we found out afterwards he had stolen the Maxwell and stolen the registration plates too. The police got him after a while and was put in prison. After he was in prison, they kept finding out other crooked things he had done. So many things that he'd be in the prison the rest of his life. There was this fellow, he used to come to see my older sister. He had a 1928 Dodge. Well, one night, I went out and jacked his hind wheels out about 1/2 inch from the ground while I was to watch when he left. Then one time, when he stepped on the gas, his wheels were spinning. And one time my mother told my dad to get rid of some of his old buggy wagons. He used to say, someday I will, and he never did. So my brother and I told my mother we each took one by getting in between the shafts and pulling it. We had to go down a steep hill to go where we dumped them in a thick grove of cedars. Well, the first 4 went down okay. Then we got to the last 2. One didn't have any shafts on it. So my brother said he'd take that one. He tied a rope to the front axle to steer it. Well, when he got halfway down the hill, one of the front wheels hit a hole so that the front wheels crammed real sharp, and the buggy came to a sudden stop. But my brother sailed right over the dasher I was laughing so that I almost lost control of mine. Well, he didn't get hurt too bad, so afterwards he turned around and stayed on the ground to steer it backwards. Sometimes when my aunts and uncles and cousins came up from St. Johnsbury, they took pictures. Well, they looked for me to have my picture taken with them, but I wasn't anywhere near them. They thought, but when the film was developed, I was in the picture. When the water pipes froze in winter, we used to have to carry the water. Had to carry the water on a spring in the back of the house, about a mile away. Well, I made me a yoke to go on my shoulders with a short rope on both ends. They hooked on them to hang the pails on. In the summer, we used to take the horses and used to gather in pot. My mother used to use that water to do her washing until they got it hot for the lamb. I remember one time 2 women got in a fight. Their name were both Bertha. But one Bertha pulled a knife. My mother got my dad in there in a hurry, and he took the knife away from her. Well, the town of Danville had to send her away. Then I remember we had an old gray horse. His name was Dan. My sister and I used to go after the mail, both riding horseback on him. Well, when we got back with him, we used to ride right into the stable with him. One of us on his back and one on his, hanging on his tail. Then I built a log cabin out of poplar logs, about 8 by 8. I think I built it more for my sister Gilbert than for myself. She always wanted a place to play in. We went out in the woods and got lost and stuff the cracks in between the logs. We used to go out and pick blackberries, and then come back to the house, get sugar and milk for the berries, and go in the log cabin and eat them where it was cooler. And I remember the night we moved on the telephone. It was Halloween night. My sisters and I had to stay there all alone. Well, my dad and brother went back for the last load and to bring my mother and my baby sister Jeanette back with them. Well, Lucille, my next to the oldest sister, was always hearing things. So after a little while, my oldest sister said to me, "Don't pay attention to her. If we listen to her, we'll be real scared." Then Lucille said she was thirsty. Well, no running water, so she took off. She said she was going to find the land. I was about 9 years old then. My oldest sister was about 15 years old. So we went with her because she was going where the cedars were real thick. We never found the land, but we did find a brook. So she got a drink out of the brook. So we went back to the house. I do admit it was kind of scary. The 3 of us alone in that old house. It's the first time that Dad and Mother had ever left us. And one time when I was 13 or 14, I used to help my dad cut wood. It was hunting season, so he brought a shotgun with him, and I brought my 22 with me. Well, the 22 I had was left to me to use and to take care of. While going back to the house for lunch, a rabbit jumped out ahead of me. So my dad says, "I'll give you first choice." So I shot. The rabbit kept going, so I shot again. And again, he kept going. Last time I shot, I hit him in the leg. I had to run and strike the rabbit with the butt of the gun. When we took the skin off him, you could see little purple marks where I shot him several times. I remember my mother used to do the washing by hand until they saved up enough money to buy a Maytag winter washer run by a gas engine. My sister Gilbert and I used to pull kale and weeds in William Mitchell's cornfield. William used to give us each a little change for doing it, sometimes 25 or 30 cents. We thought we were rich. Now I remember helping my dad cut 4-foot wood, about 25 or 30 cords, and taking the horses and take it near the woodshed. And Dad used to help Mitchell saw his wood and stoneling. And Mitchell used to come up with his saw rig and they'd saw our wood. Then us kids used to pile it in the shed, which was attached to the house. And when it got cold, my job was to carry armfuls in the house to keep 3 stoves going. Sometimes they'd let me use my cart to fill one wood box that was 3 feet high and 3 feet wide and from to 6 to 7 feet long. One stove took 2 foot wood. I used to do that after school. Going home from school, we had to walk by this place where this man lived, who had a lot of Indian blood in him. One night going home, he took a swing at me with a shovel. I had to jump or he would have hit me in the legs. So when I got home, I told my dad about it. So he says, we'll go right back there and I'll talk with him. So when we got there, my dad told him, if you ever do that again, you'll have to settle with me. So after that, the man never bothered us kids.